Morning, everybody. How are you? So yesterday we spoke about the examples of how everybody, how we all are engaged to a certain extent in one singular activity, and how some people, when they lose that, the rest of their life is gone forever almost. And that's things when I talk about your whole life revolves around one thing, like a relationship, a job, or something similar. So how do you resolve that situation where you're not in that situation anymore? So it'll be helpful, first of all, to understand more clearly what is considered to be the cause of that actual emptiness you feel in your life because it's out of balance. So using this relationship example, as I show you here, the following illustrates what your whole life looks like when you focus emotionally on one area. Now, as we spoke about yesterday in Louise's case, if the big R suddenly disappears, life looks like this without the relationship. Completely different. No wonder you feel empty. No wonder you have the urge to replace the relationship immediately. There's nothing left, really. It doesn't have to be this way, though. Looking at the following whole life, which represents an entirely different way of seeing things. So this is really how most people should have their whole life. I mean, you've got your contribution, your hobby, your leisure, your family, your alone time, your personal growth, your work, your relationships. I mean, this represents the whole life of another another person, taking the form of the grid instead of life looks amazingly different for this person. And let's call her Nancy for that reason. Not only is Nancy's grid filled out with nourishment and aliveness, but the entire area of her life seems to have increased, which in effect gives her more for her money. Let's assume that Nancy experiences the loss of her love. What does her whole life look like then? So if this relationship disappears, how does her whole life look like now? There you go. Still got contribution, still got hobbies. So yes, there's pain when Nancy splits from her boyfriend. Yes, there's lonely times. And yes, she would eventually have to have a successful relationship elsewhere. Yet without it in her life, it still works beautifully. Each day is filled with a multitude of experiences that bring her joy and satisfaction, and hence her neediness is gone. There are so many resources available to her that she truly feels that life is a giant experience and wealth of knowledge that will never be empty as a result of that. So the same principle works in the areas of a relationship when you think about it. Morning, Alana. Morning, Louise. No one really knows how long any given relationship will last. But until you decide to let it go, it is important that you give your partner and yourself the respect and dignity that you both deserve by committing yourself to their 100%. I mean, when I look back, all the things that I've been involved in, I've always given it 100% from start to finish. So if it did end, whether it's a relationship, whether it's a job, whether it's a hobby, whether it's with a time with friends, whether it did end, it would end on the right note, and it wouldn't be ending because the other person wanted it to end. So giving it 100%, if the day arises when you know that it's time to split, you will know that you've given everything you had. And if for some reason your partner decides to end that relationship, you will know you did your best. There's nothing to regret, really. If you've already incorporated the grid concept into your life, the loss will not be enormous at all. So you'll have many other areas of nourishment in your life to keep you going. And that's just what I'd shown you before in that grid. So don't revolve around one single thing. Make sure you have other things in your life. I mean, we talked about this in terms of retirement. Some, how people continually focus on one thing, and then when they eventually retire, their job's been their whole life, and then suddenly 18 months later, they're dead because they've nothing else to live for, really. I mean, that is it in a nutshell. So you make sure you've got other things I mean, I know plenty of people, their partners died and something's happened and they've gone on to successful relationships everywhere else because they've kept themselves active in all the other areas, like things like they've been to the bowls with their friends, they've been out on nights out with their friends, they've been on holidays with their friends, they've gone out and done cycling themselves, they've gone out and done walking themselves, running themselves, swimming themselves. So they've done all these different things. So when something else disappears in their life, they've got loads of other things to focus on. So one area the grid needs explanation, though, is the actual contribution. This is the area that allows you to make your own special difference in the world. I mean, contribution is we'll discuss that later, but for now, simply note that it is the area that the contributions of much your self-esteem and satisfaction and life can come from. To know that you can make a difference in this world means that you're not helpless, that you're a meaningful force in the world, and it gives you importance. It's that importance that you don't think of your contribution in such grand terms. I mean, it's important as well that you really don't think about this contribution in the terms of things like Gandhi, Martin Luther King, Albert Einstein, and anything like that. It's contribution in the way that I'm using the meanings. It means beginning exactly where you are, looking around, seeing what needs to be done, and actually doing it. So that's the contribution I'm talking about. This could relate to your family, your friends, your community, your country, your world. There is not a person alive who is not capable of greatly contributing to the well-being of others round about them on the planet. Just changing your attitude can affect the world around you. Now that you understand this concept of the grid, and you recognise its importance in reducing many of your fears regarding relationships, job, children, and so on, you're ready to take the next steps to incorporate this powerful tool into your daily life. And we'll talk about that more tomorrow. And I'll see you later at 7:30 tomorrow.